This week, Good Men's first guest, our first good man, if you will, Felix Fernandes of local Facebook fame, joins us to discuss the potential removal of the word plantations from Rhode Island's official state name. Don't do it, Rhode Island. Don't fall for it. And a Rasmussen poll showing an enormous jump in President Trump's job approval from black Americans. It just gets us all giddy. And then we offer some pre-election analysis. Overall, just a good, frank conversation on race relations, Black Lives Matter, and raising your kids in this environment. Felix Fernandes is here, a.k.a. the political GOAT, straight out of the Uncle Felix podcast. I'm a racist, he's an Uncle Tom, and we discuss.
Here is a book that I think ought to be in every home library.
You see, a woman who is single at age 40, having spent 10 or 20 years raising children, is really not quite the same as a man of age 40 who's been working continuously for 20 years.
This should be the show. This is the show.
What?
Just talk.
But it's clear through these tapes, it's clear through Planned Parenthood's own numbers that they're not about health care, they're about abortion. That's their thing.
Look at this lead pencil. There's not a single person in the world who could make this pencil. Remarkable statement? Not at all.
You are a liar.
Radical meaning not just extreme politics, what they believe in, but how far they're willing to go to win elections. And thuggery, lying and cheating and stealing are things that they've proven over and over again that they're willing to do.
We mustn't kid ourselves into thinking that the communists have placed their agitators only into the black communities. They're working both sides of the street. They want hatred, violence, and bloodshed between the races, and they don't care how they get it or whom they use, even children if necessary.
You're black or you're white, you're Latino or you're transsexual, you're homosexual or whatever. You're a group. You're a member of a group.
British government wasn't stabbing us in the gut with bayonets. They were oppressing us with taxes and regulations. That's what we meant by tyranny 250 years ago.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. This is the chief meaning of freedom.
I think we're talking at cross purposes.
Eternal law is the mind of God. The natural law is a participation in eternal law or a reflection of it.
All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing.
See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less.
This is the show, and we're not going to change it.
Good morning, Felix.
Good morning. Hold on.
I can't see you. Do I have to? I think I'm going to, there he is.
So, there we go.
Good to see you.
How's it going?
Good to see you.
No. How's it going?
Felix Fernandes, the political GOAT. That is hilarious. What does that mean? Like, you know, the greatest of all time in political analysis?
Sounds about right. But the guy from SFBNRI, what's his name? Ron Roberts came up with that name.
For you?
Yeah.
Well, that's why. That's why I had you on. I was actually going to have my brother Tyler. Do you know Tyler?
Yes. Well, I don't know him, but I know of him. Yeah.
He got a book published by Ignatius Press, and he was going to be like my first good man guest. And but then the election's coming up, and I thought of you because of probably the same thing that this guy, calling you the political GOAT, because you have such an engaging Facebook presence. That I needed a sounding board for these couple issues. The election's coming up in a week, and I was like, I think Felix would be perfect. Let's just, because you got the political bug like I do, and I figured we could just have a good conversation, particularly about, what I told you about the Providence plantations, and Trump suddenly getting like this 46% approval rating.
That was nice
African from likely black voters.
Yeah.
And so, hey, by the way, we're recording. Like, this is it. This is the show. No fancy.
I was actually going to ask you, when are we going to start recording?
No, I don't even know how to do a lead into a show. I've seen yours, and you do these lead-ins, and I'm like, I'm not even gonna fumble around with that. I'll do my lead-in later. But for my audience, like we go back to the Young Republican days in Rhode Island, and you've got the Uncle Felix podcast, you're the political GOAT, and I want everyone listening to know that the thing that's going on with Facebook and Twitter, where they're obviously the enemies of the conservative movement now, like the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
The problem is, as you get people saying like, well, we have to get off these platforms, is that my entire news world is not just the outlets that I follow, like the Providence Journal, but I have 10 to 20 friends that I rely on for certain things. Like, and you're one of them. Like when you make a post, I get notified, you know, whether it's like something silly or if it actually is like the latest breaking news. You know, that's what it's become. It's become such a great news outlet for me that I can't leave it. I'm addicted to it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. Like I started a parlay account because it seems like that's where all the conservatives are going. I started because obviously I want to support that and that whole conservative movement, but at the same time, you don't want to just, you know, abandon ship. I feel like we should almost fight for it at over at Facebook and at Twitter.
Do the best you can until you have some sort of competing outlet that can compete with Facebook and Twitter. But I wanted people listening to know that, you know, and I'll do all the links later, guys. Like follow the Uncle Felix podcast and all that. It's highly entertaining. And like I just said, I get a lot of my news. I read you like the Providence Journal, like go local Prov, you know, because you got like a Barstool thing going on too with some of the inappropriate things you post.
It's funny. I heard it from my mother-in-law the other day.
I know. I don't. When my 4-year-old walks by, I cover up my phone and my computer. No, it's not that. It's not that. It's all good stuff. You're like, but you know, it's just a great online personality you have, and you know, you're conservative, so. You're like the Rhode Island Candace Owens, not as hot. Not at
all. She's awesome. She's awesome. She's courageous. I mean, the stuff she puts up with is unbelievable. But she's always on point. You know what I mean? Like even the whole George Floyd thing when that first happened. You know, I kind of cringed a little bit the day after when she let off what she had said. Not because what she said was wrong. Everything she said was absolutely right, but the timing maybe was a little off when she was talking about, you know, George Floyd and, you know, his record and, you know, all the stuff with the rape at gunpoint and things like that. And again, everything she said was on point. Maybe the timing. I mean, the guy just passed away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't want what video you're talking about because she was like the first to say it, and I think her primary point was. She said something like, you know, the black community is the only community where we elevate these low lives.
Yeah, we're lifting these exactly low lives up to like sainthood. You know what I mean? As if this was a great man, you know, who deserved to be martyred for something. You know what I mean? And that's simply not the case.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us right to let's talk about the 40. So Rasmussen comes out with this shocking poll. That the likely black voters, not just black men who are always kind of leading with Trump against black women in the polls, 46% of likely black voters, men and women, approval rating for Donald Trump. And I don't know if approval means going to vote for, but what I've always heard, and I should have looked this up before, you know, you got on, is that if you can crack 20% of the black vote, and it's plus 90%, it's 95% in some counties, the Democratic victory hopes are over. If you can crack 20.
Yeah.
And I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's realistic at all?
I don't know about 46, but I do see him at least doubling what he got. I think he got like 8 or 9% the last time around, which is pretty high for a Republican. So I can see him getting close to the 20%. If he gets over that, I mean, that's all cake. I mean, that's great. But 46, I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, one thing that made me lift my eyebrow a few months ago was I recently got on TikTok because, you know, my kids are on it and all that stuff. So I like to see what's going on there. And it was at one time it was almost like every other post was a pro Trump post by a black person, and I was like, wow. I'm like, I did some research. I was like, maybe they got algorithms, they know what I'm into, so they're showing me things I would like, you know what I mean? But that's not the case. And I even asked my kids, I was like, you guys see all these pro-Trump stuff? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so that was very interesting. So maybe we'll all be surprised.
There are things out there, like there's the Blexit movement, there's the walk away movement. And it's also just a counter, like Trump is like this cultural rage against the machine type figure. And, maybe it's just cool. I mean, maybe, and, blacks are always ahead of the game on that. So it's like, maybe it's just, I'm trying to think of all these reasons why, maybe Trump really was the one to just realign the political framework in America, like, because, and just send this Democratic Party as it currently is, just send them packing. And he does it in a way that includes the black vote. I didn't see that coming, and I know you put up with a lot of crap, and you've posted things before that are really hateful, and we've always known this. We've been watching this for a long time, that Democrats want to keep certain types of people in their little box, and minorities are one of them. And you've posted things that I'm just shocked. How do you put up with that stuff? Someone calls you an Uncle Tom or a traitor.
You got to brush it off, you know what I mean? And this comes back to actually, my whole support of Christianity and the Bible and Jesus, the whole thing where it tells us the truth will be hated, you know what I mean? And you got to almost expect it. It's sad and it's unfortunate. It's hurtful, you know what I mean? Especially when I see people like that, because the reason it hurts me a lot is because I think, like, do these people really think I'm trying to deceive them? You know what I mean? I'm the reason I'm a conservative and I'm very vocal about it. I'm just trying to get people to express their freedom of thought. Also, you don't always have to agree with me, but as long as you have a logical, explanation for what you believe in, that's fine. We can have a dialogue and a conversation. That's how we all learn from each other. But this whole mindless, I'm going to follow, the left or the Democrat Party because this is what I was meant to be, is insanity. And that all brings me back to when I first started getting into politics, was probably right around when my kids were born. I figured, hey, I got a mortgage now. I'm paying bills. I'm a responsible adult, so I guess I should start figuring out, what everything is all about.
How old were you really? Like when you kind of had your aha moment there?
Late 20s.
Yeah.
Late 20s.
That's probably when we met. I was doing the Young Republican stuff.
It was right around that time because before I met you guys, I assumed I was a Democrat. I just assumed it. I assumed, everything I heard. Republicans are for the rich, Democrats are for the poor. Right. You know what I mean? Republicans are racist, this and that. So I assumed. Matter of fact, I remember my wife actually bought me a book when I started getting into the politics. She bought me the Barack Obama book. I forget that first book you put out. And I read it.
From my father.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And I read it. So I voted. I went out and voted for Barack Obama. You know what I mean? I went to go see him when he came down at Rick. You know what I mean? But this was very, very early on. And then when I started paying attention is when he put out the whole Obamacare thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't even sound right. You know what I mean? That's not going to be a good thing. And then I started researching more and more, and then I started realizing I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. You know what I mean? And because of my faith in Jesus and Christianity, I'm more conservative. And then I started looking at the conservative things. And I'm like, wow, I agree with all these people. You know what I mean? And then I sought out like-minded people, and that's when I came to the Republican Party.
Yeah, we used to do monthly events at just different bars, and we just try to create some camaraderie and discussion. Yeah. And you start bonding with people, and I was going back to the question. I was just conservatives on college campuses is when I kind of got the political bug, and you get called a racist so many times you can get used to it. I imagine you can be called an Uncle Tom so many times you get used to it. Yeah. And then it was like several years ago on online public forum, someone I know from way back just out of the blue tags me and calls me racist. And I just started thinking about it. It's like, this is a public forum. It's not a small thing anymore. It's such a perfunctory response for Democrats to just say the word racist. And I haven't spoken to the individual since, because I got really tired of it at one point and very angry that there are people that I know, and you use the term racist to describe me. They don't know what the context is, where you're even getting it from. And I think on the right, we've gotten too used to being, to just allowing those accusations come our way and accepting it. And I just think you got to stand up to it at some point. And you've put people in their place. I'm not saying you don't, but a couple times I've taken the time to just put people in their place by saying, you're just throwing out accusations about my character in a public forum with no evidence whatsoever. That makes you an a-hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I just thinking like I was just trying to compare it to what I go through by being a vocal conservative. And I just think it's such an unfounded, unfair thing to say, and mean and bigoted and racist itself. And I just, I was thinking it might be something like that where you just get so used to it. But I just think the time is to stand up to that crap. And I think this Blexit stuff and the Candace Owens movement, and who are some other ones that came out recently? Like all these rappers are
Kanye, came out, with at least thinking for himself. You know what I mean? Ice Cube came out recently, not really supporting Trump or anything like that, but at least thinking it's a first step anyway. You know what I mean? 50 Cent came out, but he's cowered back into his little corner now.
Yeah, he did the Drew Brees, like that his woman put him in place or something like that. Chelsea.
Yeah. Exactly, which I called from the beginning, because 50 Cent is more, if you ever follow him on social media, which I do, he's like a troll. You know what I mean? So I could tell he was looking for attention. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how he truly feels, but I knew he was going to be wishy-washy.
You post a lot about. I was just thinking about my brother's book. I just realized that you're perfect. I've been thinking about my friends to who I can introduce my brother to and tell him about my brother's book, because it comes from a Catholic perspective about fatherhood. And I know you post probably equal. You're either posting about politics or about your two sons that are at Bishop Hendricken, athletes. And I think you'd actually really like to talk to Tyler, maybe even do a show with him. I think I'm going to have him on next week. But I was just thinking about your kids at Hendricken, because I went to Hendricken and I had one black classmate. And coming from your Christian conservative perspective, do you try to vocally instill things in them, lessons? Do they follow your politics? Do you talk politics with them and tell them to beware of? And here's why I'm asking, Felix, because I've heard a lot of black parents talk about how they have to have the talk with their black sons when they leave. Do you talk to them about how the police are going to treat them differently? How do you go about raising your two teenagers?
Yeah, I try to tread a line because I don't want to, how do you say, I don't want to not brainwash them, but control what they think. You know what I mean? Sure. And you got to be careful, especially because my kids are at that age. They're 16 and 17, and so they're kind of rebellious, right? They know everything. Daddy's just in their way. You know what I mean? We all were that age. So I know if I beat them over the head with my politics, they're gonna rebel from it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But what I'm finding out, and thankfully so, they actually are conservative in their thoughts. You know what I mean?
Having adult conversations with them, you can hear it coming out.
We do. The older one, he's all about pro-life. He doesn't want to hear anything. He doesn't want to hear anything but, he'll shut you off right away. He's a one-issue guy.
Oh wow, yeah. He's he's brother Tyler. Okay.
Yeah, the younger one, he's same thing. He leans towards the right. And what I like to, when they come to me for questions, and I answer them and I explain to them why. And have I had to talk about them with police? Yeah, but you know what? Everybody should, no matter what your race is, have that talk about police and how you handle authority. You know what I mean? I tell them all the time, if you guys get pulled over and you're being treated in a way that you don't think it's fair, in all honesty, so what? Shut up, keep your mouth closed, respect it, and then when you see me, you talk to me, then we deal with it afterwards. There's a forum for that to deal with it. The forum is not fighting back against the police, out on the street. You're never going to win that one.
Yeah, you're not going to win that picking. Well, you know, while you're talking about that, I'm thinking about Black Lives Matter and some conversations I've had with it, and worthy discussion. I'm not saying it's easy to be a young black man, particularly like in Providence or Chicago or something like that. We're not talking about the neighborhoods here. But the common denominator that I see when I break down all these viral videos, the ones that everyone knows about, excluding the George Floyd thing, the common denominator that I see is a young black suspect resisting arrest. And you're just talking about being respectful and taking care of any unfairness later. And I think having good parents from the get-go, you know, you don't really, the talk isn't actually necessary because you've already instilled good values in them. They're good young gentlemen, they're good young men before they have this encounter with the police, which is coming. You know, I mean, because I can't tell you how many encounters I've had with cops. You know, a lot of white guys have this conversation where they're just like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, you know, this time I was pulled over, this cop whacked me across the head, and you know, I don't want to go there. But that's, you know, I think that's part of the problem is that you see this insanity going on, these protests, and the makeup of the protesters is, you know, these white gangly kids, you know, in black masks that are the Antifa types. But then there's the Black Lives Matter and the minority kids that are making up the other half of the rioters. And I think those are two separate issues. Like, you know, a lot of these white kids, you get the sense that, you know, there's something else going on with them. But the kids from the inner city where, you know, the fatherless rate like 80%. And I just think there might be two separate issues going on there. And I didn't know if I just wanted to throw that at you and see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about two separate issues. I mean, society as a whole, we've done a bad job with raising this younger generation. I don't know if it's because we coddled them too much. Like, you know, you see it even with young white kids and their problem with dealing with authority. Yeah. Like I know I see it all too. I've been coaching for decades, and you know, years ago or early on in my coaching career, when I corrected a kid, and that was the end of it. You know, I find, you know, as of recently, as of maybe like 5, 6, 7 years ago, now you correct the kid, and then after practice, you have a parent waiting for you. You know what I mean? Because they want to know why you corrected Junior in front of everybody. Right. You know what I mean? And so I think as a generation, we've done a bad job of having our kids deal with authority. Like it's so, like they almost feel it's okay to question authority. You know what I mean? You know, that whole thing, you're not my mom, you're not my dad.
Yeah, I forgot about that. There is something universal just sweeping across the millennial generation that, you know, the kids that, you know, you couldn't use red ink to correct their homework, and you know, no more dodgeball in the recess yard. We all know that story. That's true. I was looking more at like the distinct problems in the black community. With basically, I always think of the fatherlessness rate. And to me, that's the number one issue in the black community that nobody unfortunately wants to talk about or even address. And you're right, you know, no father in the home means basically no authority in the home. You know, so when you're not used to having somebody telling you, hey, these are the rules, this is what you got to go by, and guess what? They're the rules because I say so. You know, that technically that's not fair. You know what I mean? But that's the way it is, and that's what authority is about. Yeah, I'm a father now, so and my brother has written this book on fatherhood and all that. So I didn't really mean to go down this track with you, but my thoughts tend to go there now. I've said this a few times recently. I've just never been more concerned watching these. It's not just a riot; it's a sustained riot across the country in all these different neighborhoods. You know, right in Providence. I mean, and just like when, like.
I think a lot of it has to do with these mayors and governors not putting down these riots right away. You know what I mean? Like they let them snowball into something much bigger. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, freedom of speech, the right to assemble, but it's a peaceful assembly, right? I mean, once that first bottle is thrown or that first window is broken, these things should be shut down right away. And I think if we saw that more often, you wouldn't see the problem we see today.
And that's getting to the heart of the fact that the far left outlook and movement is integrated with the Democratic Party. So you talk about the mayors and governors that are kind of sympathizing with the movement and giving them the wink, wink. I don't want to crack down on them. Yeah. That's largely because they're benefiting. They're either benefiting from the riots or they sympathize with them.
Yeah, or they're hoping to benefit. I think it's going to backfire on them. I think they're overplaying their hand with this whole thing, and I think they're seeing that a little bit because we did. Up until yesterday, I guess there was a riot in Philadelphia yesterday. I don't know if you saw, but up until yesterday, the riots have been kind of like simmering down because they just weren't polling well with the voters.
Yeah, I just can't imagine any police officer, black or white, in the country voting Democrat. I think Trump has a real resonance with the blue collar worker anyway. This fracking stuff. Let's not even get into that. But yeah, it just you talk about the racism topic and the dog whistling that they always kind of accuse President Trump of, because the notion has always been like, why are you trying to, Republicans, why are you trying to crack 20-25% of the black vote where you could just get 4 to 5% more of the white vote, and that the number of voters are about equal if you can just when you talk about dog whistling, when people use the word racism, I don't think what you see coming out of the white community in America as racism. I see it as racial resentment. And I think Trump has really tapped into that, because we're talking about decades and decades of calling white people racist and also telling them to shut up. And I know black conservatives put up with similar things. We already talked about that. And I think what people mistake racism for resentment. And I think there are a lot of white people who kind of hear someone who's politically incorrect, and that is and I don't mean dog whistle in the way that the Democrats mean it, like, hey, wink, wink, I'm for you people who hate minorities. I mean, they're finally seeing a champion of this counter political correctness that gives people a sense of relief. Like, that's my guy, because that's how I want to talk sometimes,
Yeah, and that's the whole reason why Trump was elected. He came at the perfect time because he was so anti-PC. We were heading to a place where we were so PC, it was sickening. And like I tell, Trump was the giant middle finger to the establishment. You know what I mean? When we sent him there, I was a big Ted Cruz guy. I was worried about Trump. So I'm not sure what this guy believes. You know what I mean? And he wasn't very polished on his policies and things like that. But he's been obviously a pleasant surprise. But again, I think he was sent there because he doesn't sound like the politician. He's not politically correct. He says it like he sees it. And I think that's appealing to so many people when you've just been, I overran, I guess, with the political correctness.
Yeah, I really do. I tell people all the time that I don't have a white friend who's ever used the N-word in the back door with me, but I have a lot of white friends who roll their eyes at me and just go, I am so sick of this crap. Like, they'll say like, man, like this, like everyone being called a racist. They can't hear it anymore. They are entirely fed up. And I think that's what I mean by they're just so resentful for not being called a racist and then not being able to say anything about it. That's a bad combination for 30 years of that building up inside yourself.
Yeah, and I could tell you a few instances where, I'll meet somebody new, a white person, and they'll almost, and politics will come up in the conversation, and I can almost hear them or feel them like walking around in eggshells, you know what I mean, around me, until they figure out, oh, okay,
yeah,
he's a conservative, you know what I mean? Like,
I see people deny the power of that hardcore political correctness, and I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm like, no, there is a real fear factor in saying what you believe, and things that are, I mean, everything is racist now. I mean, it has become, and when I started kind of getting into politics like 20 years ago, everyone was irritated by the accusation of racism. It just ballooned. It's to the point where no one even knows what the term means anymore. I mean, the election of Barack Obama, and I think a lot of people thought, okay, the white guilt thing is going to be over. We're finally past it. It just escalated. It got so bad.
And it's dumbed down the conversation too, because I missed the days like early on and when I was getting into politics of debating policy. You know what I mean? That was always fun and interesting to me. Now that rarely occurs, if at all. It's all about race or, you know, any kind of ism. It's never about policy. And that, I believe, was done purposely, because I do think the left has realized they can't win that argument on policy just because the history, you know, of both, you know, policies being implemented and the success of conservative policies. I think they've abandoned that and they've replaced it with emotional rhetoric. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that actually allows for more, you know, I don't want to sound pompous, but for more people who like aren't educated on the topics to join in the conversation. You know what I mean? Because I've spoke, especially on Facebook, I'll speak to people who I know, you know, again, not to sound like an ass, are the dumbest people I could think of. Yet they're telling me, you know what I mean, that whose policies are better, and it's all about racism and things like that. It's just it's insanity.
To get them out of that box where it's all about race. I mean,
Yeah.
I've always said that what Democrats have done to like the black psyche to make it just obsessed with race. There's a whole world out there and topics and knowledge and to walk around completely obsessed with race and believing everyone is racist around you. That's like you tell me if I'm wrong, but if I was raising a minority son, I wouldn't want him to be instilled with that sense of victimhood or
yes, I tell my kids all the time, you know, they are the captain of their ship. They control their destiny. They're not victims. Nobody's holding them back. They are going to be the sum of their decisions. You know what I mean? Like, so if you make bad decisions, you're gonna end up in a bad place. You make good decisions, you're gonna end up in a good place. That's not being controlled by any outside source. You know what I mean? And this whole, you know, they've been feeding the black community this victimhood for so long, and now they believe it. You know what I mean? We believe it as a people. We think, you know, Whitey is holding us back and, you know, cops are out there hunting black people, even though you could show them clearly the statistics. And this is what aggravates me the most. You tell somebody the statistics or say, here, you show it to them. They don't want to see it. They don't believe it. It doesn't matter. They have that narrative stuck in their head that they are a victim and they demand revenge.
And at that point, they're ensnared by liberalism and they're taught to think emotionally anyway, so facts aren't getting into their head. But no. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is that even if it was true, and I think you can have an intelligent conversation and point out some areas where it might be harder to be black in America than white. I wouldn't want my kid knowing that. I wouldn't want to instill that sense of victimhood in him, even if it was true. I wouldn't even want to tell him. You know, I would want to teach him what you teach your kids.
And that's a good point of that is like if you're a football coach, right, and you're coaching your team to play a game, you know, in the back of the head, you know they're going to get slaughtered, right? But you're like, you know, you go out there, you give it your best. It's that same mentality because it's true. You still at the end of the day, you still got to play the game. You know what I mean? And
we got these guys. Don't worry about it. They're not that good. They get blown out, but maybe you didn't get blown out as much as you thought. Exactly. Confidence can go a long way. Yeah, no, I love the sports analogy. No, I just, you know, so I really wanted to talk about this 46% thing and if maybe this is true, maybe this is where, you know, the minority vote, the black vote just exits, the Blexit out of the Democratic Party. And if it's devastating to that Democratic Party, which I have so much contempt for, that would be just excellent. I didn't see it coming. And if 46% might be unrealistic, like you said, but if it's like 20% and this Candace Owens movement is real, then I was just trying to look for reasons for why it would happen. And you mentioned the success of Republican policies. I mean, the lowest unemployment rate. I'm getting that right? Like the lowest black unemployment rate since we've been measuring it for 50 years. Mm-hmm. I mean,
the lowest rate. You put that in with what he's done for HBCUs, the opportunity zones that he's implemented. I mean, he has done it. You know, like he says himself, he has done more for the black community since Abraham Lincoln, and he's not wrong when he says that.
And that's something that the news can't necessarily hide because black Americans feel it. Like that's something that the news can't necessarily hide because black Americans feel it. Like I have a job, I have a raise, You know,
Yeah,
you
the
can't
median,
tell me I'm not better off than I was 4 years ago.
You know, the medium income went up. Everything was looking good until obviously the whole COVID thing. You know what I mean? And now they're trying to, you know, plant that all on him, which is totally unfair. But that's a whole nother.
Yeah, and some high-profile gaffes like Joe Biden, who maybe he's the perfect candidate for us because, although I think he's always been kind of a blowhard. But when he said like, "You ain't black if you don't know if you're for me or Trump," you know, that was a really high-profile mistake. And I wanted to mention to you, and actually I pulled something up here because that you probably realize this, but that wasn't new. It was 2009 when Reverend Jesse Jackson said, "You can't vote against Obama's health care and call yourself a black man."
Yeah.
You know? And it was Bill Clinton's advisor in the year 2000 that said, Al Gore's advisor said, quote, "Bill Clinton will deliver the minorities to him" when he was running against W. Bush. And so this has been going on. This idea that white Democrats own black voters. And I don't mind that analogy, calling it mental slavery, because it just offends me so much, and I think it's appalling what they've done to minority psyche. And I'm glad to see guys like you break out of it. You know, think for yourselves.
It's a new plantation. It's just a different form of slavery. Like you said, it's the mental slavery right now, and they take the black vote for granted because I don't believe there's any other demographic that votes that high of a percentage for one party. Like you said, it's in the upper 90s sometimes.
Yeah, I guess maybe like you can't even blame Democrats for taking it for granted because it's working so well.
No,
yeah,
exactly.
Well, in
and
7
for
days,
what has the black community gained from doing that? You know what I mean? Like I always point out to everybody, like, how can you blame Republicans for anything when you go to cities like Detroit, you know, Chicago, and all those things? There's not a Republican in sight. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
everything is ran by the Democrats. So why? So, you know, who are you blaming? And the other thing too that I want to talk about is, you know, people like LeBron James. That guy really irks the crap out of me. You know, this whole push to, you know, to vote for change, right? Change would mean doing something different. You're telling people to go vote the exact same way they have been voting. So what sense does that make? You know what I mean? Like change means exactly that, change. And you ask people to vote the same way. I don't get it.
Yeah, no. I mean, the logic is crystal clear. You wonder why you can't break through to so many skulls. You want to break through a lot more minds, and obviously that's true. It's just, you know, the definition of insanity and all. I think you're alluding to all that, and but that does segue us into election year, okay? And here it comes. You've done nothing, Democrats, for the black community, the minority community. Your policies suck. So this is where I wanted to go with and get your thoughts on getting rid of Providence plantations from the state. Because, man, Trump, Republican policies, unemployment rate just dives. You got jobs, and you can feel it. But don't forget, Republicans are racist. You know? And you know how I'm going to prove it? They want to keep the word plantations in Rhode Island state name. They want you to cast a protest vote against people who don't like you instead of people who are doing, even if it were true that the Republican Party represented some sort of oppressive racism and they hated you, the logic that you're using is, who cares? I got a job. Like, you know, it's something like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's just nuts. Like the whole, it's like you said, they have nothing to show. Like, if Trump is a racist, he's bad at it, right? Because he's lifting up the black community. If he was a racist, obviously he'd be implementing policies that would hold black people down, and that's clearly not the case. And they have nothing on the left to show for anything. So yeah, they're going to point to the word plantations. I mean, what's next? We're going to ban the word change because it had to do with slavery. Like, at the end of the day, okay, we take plantations out of the name of Rhode Island, and you know, besides it costing us, I heard millions of dollars, like in replacing all the paperwork and stuff like that.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, because all the letterheads and things like that. But what did it accomplish? Absolutely nothing.
It's like
It's
like the statues. When they were tearing down all the statues this summer, it was like I wrote a piece for the Ocean State Current saying, okay, just imagine that you're totally successful and all the statues, you topple them all across the country. Yeah. What did that do? What was the purpose of it all? I mean, if getting rid of plantations from the state name meant that Representative Anastasia Williams had to go to Canada or something like that, or just like Maine, like the northern tip of Maine for 20 years, I might make that trade. But other than that, it's like it accomplishes nothing. You're going to be complaining about the same things the next election cycle. And what really offends me is that it's so clearly, obviously, a political stunt to ensnare and keep the minds of blacks ensnared inside the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And I had this conversation at a barbershop recently about the statues. All it does is hide history. It should be statues. Let's say you don't agree with the person who's on the statue. You have a conversation. Hey, this is what that person did, and this is why we don't agree with them. But the history is there, and you learn from it. You don't run from it. It's your history. But it's just that dumbed down mentality. Oh, it's racism and this and that. And the ironic thing, I tell everybody, all these statues are knocking down. I go, about 90% of them are all Democrats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean,
knocking down.
But nobody. D'Souza's doing the best with opening up that history of the Democratic Party. He's the man. If you want to educate people on the history of the Democrat, I mean, getting rid of the word Democrat, holding them to their own standards, you'd have to.
Exactly.
The history of the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party is just illuminating, and makes perfect sense when you start learning about it.
I posted something from Dinesh not that long ago on Facebook about how he made the comments how there was no Republican that owned a slave, and you should have seen the responses I got from that. Everybody was calling me a liar. That's not true. How can you prove that? This and that. Like, they don't even know. Which is, they don't know. Obviously, it's not even taught in school. But it was funny the other day. I noticed I was listening to Kamala Harris, and she was making a point, and she brought up Abraham Lincoln, and she refused it. Like, the way she worded the thing, she went out of her way to not mention that he was a Republican. She matter of fact, she said Abraham Lincoln and his party. You know what I mean? Like, she did not want to say he was a Republican. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it's funny, it's sad, the amount of people that don't even realize that Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. It's sad when I tell adults that. Sometimes they look at me cross-eyed, like, are you serious?
I don't think there's any doubt. I don't think there's any doubt, and I don't know if it's intentional or it becomes institutional, but part of it is intentional. Is that leftists for a long time purposely went into all the mediums of information, the media, the university, our educational system, and when someone finally breaks down 100 years of that conspiracy, and you start looking at what you weren't taught and what you don't know. And why wouldn't they have? Why am I under a false impression? Why wasn't that taught? It can get really scary. You start realizing that this, the left, they really do. If there is a medium, if there is a platform that is aiming to control information, they are going to the top of it. And Facebook and Twitter are the latest examples. I mean, Facebook and Twitter were like, this is social media. Felix, you are now a source of information for me. That's how it's supposed to work, is that you can choose who you want to follow. It's no longer the mainstream media, but give it 15 years. And what did they do? They made Facebook and Twitter just as devious and harmful as ABC, NBC, CBS were for 40 years. Now we got to have that battle all over again.
At the same time, thank God for social media or alternative forms of getting your news. Because if we were stuck with the mainstream media getting our news, just imagine how much worse it would be.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
You're against. You're going to vote what? No on question 1, getting rid of Providence plantations. Then.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's just silly.
10 years ago, it went down in flames. Right? They did this isn't like it's new. I'm kind of trying to say, make the case that, it's an election year and we don't want minorities to see Republican policies working, so we're going to remind them about the emotional vote that they have to cast against Republicans because they hate you. And so they put this issue out there, and they're trying to get someone like me to make an objection. And they're out there saying that the word is painful. And this is what I wanted to tell you is that 10 years ago, I took Representative Almeida on with this issue because he said one of his comments while he was arguing to get rid of the word plantations was, it's not a big deal. Nobody uses the term anyway. Everyone calls it Rhode Island. Like, you walk around Rhode Island, most people don't even know that's the full name of the state.
Yep.
But then in the next breath, he makes the case that it's a painful reminder of slavery. It can't be painful if no one hears
nobody uses it. Exactly.
And they're doing the same thing. If they're so concerned with minorities' feelings, stop bringing it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so they can say they did something. It's the same thing with the whole cancel culture and the Aunt Jemima thing. I mean, did our lives change because Aunt Jemima is no longer around? Uncle Ben's rice is not around now. Like, did that change anything? The most disappointing one is the whole Washington Redskins thing.
Symbolism over substance. It's theatrics over thought, and it's how they're taught. I'm sorry, but like I always think back to, Brown University and when I started getting involved, and I just noticed that you guys, all you have are theatrics and antics. There's no original thought coming out of you. And these are the smartest kids in the country, apparently.
Allegedly.
And that's when I started gaining confidence in political thought. It's like, geez, I thought you would be like tough to take on, but I figured this out in a few seconds that you think what he thinks, and then you think what he thinks, and you really only have to argue with one person because they all have this uniform.
All group think.
And it's really dangerous, and that's another crime what they do on college campuses. And I know your kids are probably about to take off to college in a couple of years, and they have to be aware. Like, you can waste 4 years there. And not only waste, your mind can come out seriously misshaped.
Yeah, even what's scary is what's going on in these, especially the public schools, with that whole 1619 project and all those things, and just the things like, even not just in public schools but in colleges too. Like I get students sometimes will send me stuff that their teachers are talking about or sending them, and it's scary. And as a parent, as a conservative parent, you need to be on top of that. Like, I remember it was like about a month ago when this whole Black Lives Matter thing was, or 2 months ago, about a month ago, was happening here in Rhode Island, all the protests. And all of a sudden, my son tells me that the following week they were going to have a meeting to discuss this. So I was like, who's running this? Because now I'm very interested, because I want to know what they're going to be feeding into my son's brain. So
speaker. Yep.
Yeah. So I called the school, and I'm like, hey, I heard that there's a Black Lives. You guys are going to be talking about issues and about how Black Lives Matter next Friday. Can I want to know what's the gist of this conversation going to be? And they know me all pretty well there, so they knew what else, But so they assured me that they were just gonna tell the kids, the minority kids there, that if they need anything, that they're there for them, and this and that. And at the end of the day, I was fine with it. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't going to pump in any victimhood and how they're oppressed and this and that. And my kid walk out of the meeting with a Black Lives Matter T-shirt or something. You know what I mean?
The new Friday, casual Fridays, where you BLM shirts. How do they do it, Henry? How do you two boys do it, Henry? What are they, a senior and a sophomore or something like that?
Senior and a junior.
Yeah. How are they doing? I know they're
doing good.
Yeah.
They're doing good. I mean, they love their sports. They're in the mid-3s with their GPA. The older one is looking at certain schools to go to now, and they love it. They absolutely love it. One of the best decisions I ever made was sending them there, especially when I see like the state of the public schools. It's just scary because you don't know what you're gonna get. You know what I mean? In the public schools, where at the private schools, at least, or I can only really speak for Hendricken, but at least I know somewhat what they're getting there, and it's not, they're not being brainwashed.
That's another, I'm really careful with I think the colleges it's a solidified piece of knowledge that they're long gone. They've been taken over by leftists. The elementary schools, I think that's a little hard for me to pin down, and I see a lot, and you probably see the same news as I do, and because social media feeds you the news that you're interested in, and I get a lot of right-wing news. And I think if you have the discipline to follow left-wing sites as well, you can maintain your balance on social media and not get distorted. Like if Joe Biden wins next week, I don't want to be surprised by that. I don't want to be the guy being like, I don't know anyone who likes Joe Biden. But so if you have a discipline to follow the other side on social media purposely, and what I'm getting at is, you see a lot of disgusting stories coming out of the elementary schools and the K through 12 and the indoctrination that's going on. And if you see 5 stories, 10 stories, you start thinking that it's really widespread. Like every teacher in a public school is a social justice warrior. and that's when you really gotta try to pull yourself back and just maybe take the schools on a case-by-case basis. But it is to the point right now where I'll say this: I don't trust them at all. I trust but verify. If my kids end up in a public school, I'm just going to trust but verify, because I know leftists. I know that if there's information being discharged, they want to be in control of the information. 1619 Project. There's the Harvard professor that came out and she's rallying against homeschooling. I mean, think about being so arrogant that you think you have the right to educate other kids' children. I mean, I can't. I mean, they have no shame. I know leftists like the back of my hand, and I've been studying the far left for 20 years. That's really kind of like my specialty and my niche in politics. And so, if anyone listening to this, kids going to school, you need to trust but verify. I'm not saying every public school is off the charts SJW, but just trust but verify, because there are some wacky teachers out there. It was a Pawtucket teacher. Are you in Pawtucket?
I'm in Lincoln.
Oh, my brother Tyler is too. It was a Pawtucket teacher that put red paint all over the Columbus statue in Providence.
Yeah. Jenks junior high teacher. I think
you know.
Yeah.
Get your eye on.
Yeah, I remember the story. But yeah, it's scary when you see like and it's when you see all this radical stuff being done, it seems to be from people from the world of academia. You know what I mean? They're professors, they're this, they're that. It's not a coincidence in my opinion. You know what I mean?
No, I think what you see on the campus, give it 10, 20 years, you'll see it in the main culture. And that's what I see on the streets right now. I see a bunch of like maladjusted adults, like, a teacher, a lawyer who threw a bomb inside the New York City cop car. It reminds me of what we learned about, radical Islam. Is like, it's not a poverty issue. Some of these terrorists come out of like wealthy families from the Middle East or they live in England. We learned that there's an ideological problem. There's something going on with the way people think. It's not necessarily coming out of issues of poverty or whatever excuse you're going to make for them.
Yeah, no, and that's the key thing, is getting people. They're teaching, or they're implementing ways for these kids to think, and I guess that's what's scared. They're not thinking for themselves, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're teaching these kids what to think, and it's scary.
I think I come at life. I come at all this stuff from a perspective of a father now, like I know you do, and I just think about arming your kids because the culture. Man, I'm watching Netflix cartoon the other day. My 4-year-old's watching a cartoon. Swear to God, I was tidying up the toys, and the homosexual agenda came right out of the cartoon. One 13-year-old is like, I'm gay, and like, I'm not a boycotter. I didn't cancel my Netflix, but it's real. I mean, it's out there. If you have a Christian perspective, it doesn't matter. The school's going to teach it. The Netflix is going to teach it, and not to get we're going to talk about plantations, but but you know what I'm saying, right? The culture is left.
It's definitely the culture, everything. And I watch Netflix all the time, and the stuff, like, you can't go through a movie or an episode without them taking a shot somehow at the right. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's gotten to the point where you shrug it off now, and you like, I just roll my eyes. You know what I mean? It's funny because when I'm watching TV with the wife, and she looks at me right away, she knows I'm gonna roll my eyes. Like,
so you're not a cancel culture guy either. Like, you didn't cancel Netflix. Like, No. I love it. Like, I mean, I just like, I'm watching The Office right now with Kathy every night. Like, I'm not canceling Netflix.
No, and I ended up being on the other side, believe it or not, of that whole cuties thing. the TV show the movie, the Netflix movie Cuties. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, I watched it too, and I'll be honest with you. Was it some of the, like a couple of scenes you're like, oh wow, these kids are so young to be doing that, but I didn't see it as what people were making it out to be, and I ended up being the minority on the conservative side because I posted, yeah, I saw it. It's not what people are thinking it is, and people were like, oh my god, they were surprised at that. But
it was like nothing I've ever seen in a movie, and to me, it's just the culture pushing the limit again, like
that's the way I looked at it. They're pushing the envelope. They're trying to get attention to it, but I didn't see it as it was promoting pedophilia. As a matter of fact, the message in the movie was actually the opposite of that.
It was supposed to be a warning against over sexualization, right? And maybe that's how the writer thought, the directors and the producers thought that's how we'll get away with this. Is that? Yeah. I watched it because there's so much hype about it. I was like, I gotta see what they had these 11-year-olds doing, and it was suggestive dancing, and it was horrible. I mean, kids watching it or anything, or my kids acting in it. Like those were actually 11-year-old girls, right?
Yeah, but we got to be careful, on the right, not to fall into the same thing. Like we don't want to become a cancel culture ourselves. You know what? Because at the end of the day, if you don't like it, don't watch it. You know what I mean? That's my opinion on it. Like why do we always have to destroy something we don't agree with?
No, 100%. I just you don't want to become what you hate, and but we got to guard our kids against the culture in the best way we can. Mm-hmm. And there's ways to do it, and you don't have to go cancel the Netflix just yet. Things aren't that bad.
Exactly.
Hey, you've given me an hour. I this went off in tangents. I didn't think it was going to go, but I thought that was pretty good. I'm definitely gonna, in all my posts, I'll link to the Uncle Felix podcast, and maybe you'll get some friend requests on your personal page too, because that's where the action's really at for me.
Yeah. Well, now I'm actually at my limit for friends, so they can follow the page now.
You have 5,000 personal Facebook friends?
And I delete some every day because I got 5,000 friends, but I get requests all the time. Yeah. And so that makes me, I go through my list and I start deleting people who I have no idea who they are.
Yeah, no, well, listen, maybe now people will realize why I had you on, because you're like a great local online personality, politically wise anyway. And it's just great engagement. Just like it would be on like a business page for a news outlet. It's just, you tackle the issues head on, and it's great commenting on there, some debate and some nastiness.
It's fun. Some people get, a little too serious on it. Unfortunately, I've lost friends over it. You know what I mean? But that's on them. What are you going to do?
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's unfortunate. I always have a few people in my head that I don't talk to anymore, and I know why. Politics becomes personal. Unfortunately, you try to separate as much as you can.
But my wife has stopped taking me to weddings now because I go to weddings. It's funny, and I'm usually quiet. Like I don't bring up politics unless somebody else brings it up. Then I speak my mind, and it's gotten to the point where I'll be at a wedding now, and people will seek out my table and try to argue with me about stuff that I post. It's crazy. I'm like, I'm here to enjoy a wedding. I'm not really here to argue with you.
Everyone wants to take their shot at the champ.
Yeah. But you best not miss, right? That's how the saying goes.
No, good for you, man. Hey, let's do it again. We'll do kind of a regular thing. And
yeah, definitely. You know what? And I'm gonna have you on mine.
Oh, you're gonna lose friends. Your 5,000 friends is gonna go down to 2,000 after that.
I'm doing a live show next week during the elections. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be determined that night. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna do a live show on my podcast next week on Tuesday. So I'm going to have a bunch of people on. So if you're available, you know what I mean? Hopefully you can be one of them.
Pop in.
I'm going to have 4 or 5 hours to fill. So.
No, I'm in. I can't wait. We'll reconnect next Tuesday though, election day. And hopefully it's a happy day,
Oh, I think it will be. That's my prediction anyway.
Red wave?
Red wave. I think he'll be up big. And then you're going to see a lot of networks too scared to give it to him because of the mail-ins. But I think he's going to be up big.
And then a few months of riots that will hopefully be over by Christmas.
A few months of riots, a few Supreme Court rulings. We'll see what happens.
All right, man. Let's sign off. That was a good hour. I'll talk to you this week.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right.